The Black Pope and the Church of Satan. Welcome. The two heroes within the magical community that I myself am very wary of. The first of these is Aleister Crowley, whom I guess at some time I must record a vlog on. Although I have to say I've little to add to what others have already said. I mean, there's so much on Aleister Crowley. The second, however, is Anton LaVey, the founder of the Church of Satan. And it's him that this vlog is about. Now, I want to reassure you that my concerns are not directly religious concerns, although they are connected to my faith. But it's a deeply held conviction that both were narcissists, maybe psychopaths, and used the occult to promote individualism. In other words, both put the ego first, taking us further away from finding God. And now, if they really are satanic, then for me it's Milton's Satan. But even so, to me, it's still a metaphor. It's a metaphor in my daily jihad between my own internal good and evil, me suppressing my ego. Anton LaVey. Anton LaVey was born Howard Stanton Levey on the 11th of April 1930 in Chicago to Chechen and Ukrainian parents. LaVey claimed that he left high school to join a circus and later carnivals, first as a roustabout and then as a cage boy in an act with big cats, and finally as a musician playing the calliope. LaVey later claimed to have seen many of the same men attended both the bawdy Saturday night shows and the tent revival meetings on the Sunday mornings, which reinforced his increasingly cynical view of religion. In a foreword to the German edition of the Satanic Bible, which he wrote, he cites this as his reason to defy Christian religion as he knew it. But journalists have actually found no evidence that LaVey ever worked in a circus, either as a musician or a cage boy. In the winter of 1948, LaVey began to work as an organist in bars, lounges and nightclubs. While playing the organ in Los Angeles burlesque houses, he allegedly had a brief affair with the then unknown Marilyn Monroe. She was a dancer at the Mayan Theatre. But this is challenged by those who knew Monroe. Anton LaVey became a local celebrity in San Francisco through his paranormal research and live performances as an organist, including the Wurlitzer at the Lost Weekend Cocktail Lounge. He was a publicly noticeable figure. He drove around in a coroner's van and he walked his black leopard named Zoltan around town. He attracted many of San Francisco's notables to his parties. Guests included the writer Fritz Leiber and the filmmaker Kenneth. LaVey formed a group called the Order of the Trapezoids, which later evolved into the governing body of the Church of Satan. In the film Polanski Unauthorized, he is shown as an advisor on Polanski's movie Rosemary's Baby. LaVey is portrayed by Tom Dweilett, although he's widely quoted as having been advisor on Rosemary's Baby, which seems to be a fabrication. In 1980, the FBI interviewed LaVey in connection with the alleged murder of Ted Kennedy. The agents reported that LaVey's interest in the Church of Satan is strictly from a monetary point of view. Anton LaVey died on October 29th, 1997 in St. Mary's Medical Center in San Francisco of pulmonary edema. He was taken to St. Mary's, a Catholic hospital, because it was closest available. Later, a secret satanic funeral, attended by invitation only, was held in Coma, after which LaVey's body was cremated. On February the 2nd, 1998, his estranged daughter Zena Schreck and her then husband Nicholas Schreck published a 9-page fact sheet which claimed that many of LaVey's stories about his life had been false. The Church of Satan. LaVey gave Friday night lectures in San Francisco on the occult and rituals. He founded the Church of Satan itself on Walpurgisnacht of 1966, which he proclaimed to be the year 1, Anno Satanas, the first year of the Age of Satan. LaVey began performing weekly Satanic rituals, which follow us at his house in San Francisco, known as the Black House. The Church does not believe in the devil as such, not a Christian or Islamic notion of Satan. No, the Church views Satan as a sort of positive archetype who represents pride, individualism and enlightenment, a symbol of defiance against the Abrahamic faiths, which LaVey criticised for what he saw as their suppression of human natural instincts. LaVey's image has been described as Metastophelian, and may have been inspired by an occult-themed episode of the television show The Wild Wild West, titled The Night of the Druid's Blood. The Los Angeles Times and the San Francisco Chronicle were among the newspapers that printed articles dubbing him the Black Pope. Because Christian churches, and especially the Roman Catholic Church, are considered an anathema to the Prince of Darkness, Satanists use parodied versions of their rituals and symbols in their ceremonies. The cross is used but is worn or displayed with a long beam pointing downward. Satanists may on occasion use the pentagram or 5-pointed star, traditionally used by the practitioners of Wicca and witchcraft. But as with the cross, it's inverted, resting on a single point rather than two. Satanists insist that their parodying and inversion of the religious rites and symbols are not done strictly for the purposes of blasphemy. LaVey performed satanic baptisms, recorded on the Satanic Mass LP, which he released, and satanic funerals. Satanists condemn prayer and confessions in vain as futile gestures, believing that the way to achieve what one wants is through magic and aggressive effort, and that the best method of ridding oneself of guilt is not to assume it in the first place. Many people attended the Church of Satan, including Sammy Davis Jr. and Jane Mansfield, but rumours of a romantic connection with Jane Mansfield are probably erroneous, as are those that he claimed he placed a curse on Mansfield, which resulted in her death. In the late 1960s and early 70s, LaVey merged ideological influences from Friedrich Nietzsche, Ayn Rand and H.L. Mencken, and social Darwinism with the ideology and ritual practices of the Church of Satan. He wrote essays introduced with reworked excerpts from Ragnar Redbeard's Might is Right, and concluded with satanised versions of John Dee's Enochian Keys to create books such as The Complete Witch and The Satanic Rituals. In 1972, the public work at LaVey's Black House in San Francisco was ended, and work was continued via sanctioned regional grottos. In early 1975, LaVey announced the higher degrees of initiation could be given in return for financial contributions. In 1973, church leaders in Michigan, Ohio and Florida split to form their own Church of Satanic Brotherhood. However, this disbanded in 1974 when one of its founders publicly converted to Christianity. Subsequently, members of the Church of Satan, based in Kentucky and Indiana, left to found the Ordo Templis Satanis. In June 1975, the editor of the church's newspaper, Michael Aquino, left the Church of Satan and formed the Temple of Set, claiming to take an unknown number of dissenters with him. beliefs are one of the reasons why you'll hear me somewhat sceptical about Satanism. Of course, Anton LaVey established the Church of Satan, so that was is an organised religion. But prior to the 20th century, Satanism didn't really exist, perhaps except in the imagination of the Abrahamic religions. Particularly Christians claimed that it existed. They were used when persecuting other religions, during events like the Inquisitions, the sort of witch hunts of Europe and colonial America, and the satanic panics that occurred all over the West in the 1980s. The popular image of Satan as a horned, red, demonic human figure with a ponytail and sometimes hooves, where does it really come from? To Christians, sinners are sent to his domain, which is hell, which is where sinners go after death. But again, this is a creation of the Abrahamic religions. Hell is described as an underground world dominated by fire and sadistic demons under Satan's command. But these were really used by the church to establish their dominance. Although the idea of Satan, it didn't first appear in Christianity. It began with the Zoroastrian devil figure of Angara Mainyu, or Amriman, who opposed the Zoroastrian creator god and tempted humans. Satan is later portrayed in the Jewish Kabbalah, which presents him as a demon who lives in a demonic realm. But he was really established as the nemesis of Christ in the New Testament. The final book of the Bible, Revelations, depicts him as the ultimate evil. And it's this Christian figure of Satan that Satanism directly references. But LaVey, he's probably misunderstood due to his showmanship. And he should equally be recognised as a philosopher. And indeed, as I'm about to say later, a magician. LaVey included references to other esoteric and religious groups within his writings, claiming influence of the Yazidis, the Knights Templars, were carriers of the Satanic tradition that had been passed down to the 20th century. But as you can tell, I'm somewhat sceptical of these views. He regularly derided older esotericists. LaVey also relied upon their work. For instance, he used John Dee's Enochium system in the Satanic Bible, and as you may know, John Dee's quite a hero of mine. LaVey became a part of the conspiracy culture as he grew older, and he was greatly concerned with modern society's impact on individualism. LaVey himself, despite everything, despite the showmanship and everything that you've heard, was actually very conservative, particularly in his attitudes to law and order. And he was an opponent of drug use. He supported eugenics and believed that it would be a necessity in the future. He hated rock and heavy metal music, regardless if it had satanic lyrics, and often expressed his distaste for it. LaVey presented Satanism not as the practice of evil or the worship of an actual antichrist, but as a kind of ethical egoism, which is my argument, and why I'm sort of somewhat circumspect about him. LaVey sees traditional religions were fundamentally hypocritical. So remember his story about the men going to the bawdy tents on a Saturday night and the preaching tents on the Sunday. So he saw them as hypocritical and dangerously inhibited by physical tendencies and emotional needs that were vital to human life. life. LaVey's Satanism was probably, you could argue, is atheistic. The opposition between God and Satan, representing for him the struggle between hypocrisy and passion on the one hand, and indulgence and liberation on the other. So nothing to do with the Christian representation of Satanism. LaVey instructed his followers to obey the law. As I said, he was very much in favour of law and order. And he taught that indulgences in pleasure could only be beneficial if they didn't harm others. His books, the Satanic Bible and the Satanic Rituals, have a massive influence beyond the Church of Satan. I remember LaVey's writings were widely accessible in British bookshops and even in public libraries. And I seem to remember as a teenager one floating around. I'm not sure I read it, or if I did, it didn't have a huge impact on me. But I do remember it being around when I was a teenager. In the Satanic Bible, he lists 9 declarations that defined Satanism for a new age. Firstly, indulgence instead of abstinence. Second, vital existence instead of spiritual pipe dreams. Thirdly, undefiled wisdom instead of hypocritical self-deceit. Fourthly, kindness to those who deserve it instead of love wasted on ingrates. 5, vengeance instead of turning the other cheek. 6, responsibility to the responsible instead of a concern for psychic vampires. 7, man is just another animal, more often worse than those that walk on all fours, who because of his divine spiritual and intellectual development has become the most vicious animal of all. 8, all of the so-called sins, as they lead to physical, mental or emotional gratification. 9, Satan is the best friend of the church has ever had, as he's kept it in business all these years. Well, I'm sure, like me, you can agree with many of those. But there are some of them that begin to take us down that slippery slope of egoism, of individualism. And that's where my beef with him really lies. He exalts sexual lust above spiritual love, claiming that the latter is but a sham and a cover-up. Satanism declares that violence must be met with violence, and that love to one's neighbour is a utopian unreality. He says, hate your enemies with your whole heart, and the Satanic Bible advises that if a man smite you on one cheek, smash him on the other. Smite him hip and thigh, for self-preservation is the highest law. So again, things that I don't just disagree from a philosophical point of view, but as someone who has fought off black magic for all these years, somebody who knows that this is the wrong way to approach things. To the Satanist, the Christian way of life is colourless, odorless, tasteless, that will induce stagnation and boredom. Worship of Satan believe that the way to greater levels of personal perfection and to an exploration of the deeper mysteries of life is through study and the performance of rituals emphasising the essential nature of humankind and directing the power towards the release of psychic and emotional energy. So, as well as a philosopher, he was a ceremonial magician. Maybe not within a recognisable tradition, although I've got to say I honestly don't know. But he certainly had a strong appreciation of the psychological theory of magic. Just as Aleister Crowley did, but coming at it from a completely different standpoint to myself. Now, members of the Church of Satan can also participate in magic, which LaVey defines as greater and lesser magic. So greater magic is a form of ritual practice, and it's meant to be a catharsis to follow one's emotional energy for a specific purpose, whereas lesser magic is the practice of Machiavellian manipulation, of applied psychology and glamour, or wile and guile as he called it, to bend the individual situation to one's will. So that really is so close to my definition of black magic. I hope you don't feel I've done a hatchet job on Anton LaVey because of, I'm certainly not coming at it from a strictly religious point of view. It is that I have embarked on a journey to suppress my own ego, and what he preaches is the exact opposite. Well, I really hope you've enjoyed this vlog, and that, not only got something out of it, but provoked thoughts. I'm not here to push my beliefs, my thoughts on you, only to open up your own thinking, get you thinking about the world and life. When I started The Real Magic of Java, I believed that I'd only release them every month or maybe every 2 months. But now I find myself adding to this subsection once or twice a week. But please subscribe and hit the bell to get notifications for when I add new parts to this subsection. In part, the reason why I'm doing it more often is that the concept has moved from filming rituals and events that took place in Java to me also describing my beliefs and philosophy. And that does come in response to people expressing an interest in it. But of course, me actually seeing rituals and events really doesn't happen so often. What I would say to you is that there's no attempt at subterfuge on my behalf. And when I do experience rituals, I will include them for you to see. And as I say, there's no way I'm trying to mislead you. And if I believe there is subterfuge, if I uncover it, I will point it out to you. I'm trying to be as honest as I can be. Now, please make comments, please ask questions, and I'll try to be as honest and open with you as I can be. Of course, there will be some of you who disagree with me, particularly when I talk in terms of my own beliefs, my own feelings. And, you're welcome to alternative feelings, and we can agree to disagree. Sometimes I find that people on YouTube can be unnecessarily attacking and aggressive, and at times I don't restrain myself enough, and I apologise, but it's not my intention to put anybody down, I know what I talk about can be emotive, and it can be challenging to your beliefs. But, I'd love to enter an open discussion, a heartfelt discussion. But unfortunately, I often come across things that are, especially when people quote the scriptures to me, I've just no idea where it takes us, Because I'm speaking from the heart, sorry, if you want to quote the scriptures at me, do so, but it doesn't have much impact on me, I personally have no desire to impose my feelings on you, and I suppose when people try to do it to me, it washes off, All I'm trying to do is I'm trying to share my feelings with you, and I'd love an open discussion on feelings. I really would love it, and sorry if I don't always react as best I should. I try and cure this in myself, but I think this is part of the sort of narcissism of social media that I talk about so much in this subsection. So look, if you've enjoyed it, I really urge you to listen to other sections on this channel, particularly the 4 audio books that I've uploaded onto this channel. Yes, they are in a novel format. They are novels, but they go into much greater depth than my thoughts and feelings. Now, what I would say to you is these are sequential. So my thoughts and feelings develop as we go through each chapter and each book. So it does begin with 1.1, the Chinese cemetery. But, hey, it's up to you. Feel free to dip in as you wish, as you want. And, you know, really heartfelt thanks for listening to this. And I really want to say a great big thank you, and God bless you.